Hello, it's Noir Nerd, and this is going to be a tutorial for a method for creating a noughts and crosses game in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So this is, I basically decided to set myself the challenge of creating this game without referring to much or anything else. So basically to create it from scratch. So my solution may not be the most efficient, may not be the best, most elegant, but this is basically me showing tutorial. I want to do a mix of a tutorial and a code overview for this one, showing how I approached it, why I approached it that way, and I'll sort of explain my thinking as I go along, I suppose. So this is and we'll build it at the same time, the way I did it from originally. So this is the, well, it's not exactly finished, there's probably more I can add to it, but this is the game. So obviously this is HTML and CSS for the presentation. I'm calling it noughts and crosses. I know I think Americans call it tic-tac-toe, but it's bloody noughts and crosses, I swear. But anyway, so let's just have a look. So we've got the console open here, and then we've got this empty board of 9 squares representing the noughts and crosses board. I click, it start with noughts. So you'll see here that we've got 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So what I've done is I've done this with arrays, and the way I check is by checking in index positions. That's how I've approached it. It's probably quite weird how I've approached it as well, because basically whenever I add a new, so if I add an X now, you'll see I add a string there, so it's 0x, and then basically I check for the index positions of where these are. And there, so you can see there at the end now there's a 0 and there's an X, or no, and an X, sorry, not 0 really. And then if we go here, you'll see that the X goes into position 7. La 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 la. So it's probably quite an unusual way of doing it. And then if I click X now, it'll go win, crosses win, and it resets the game. So, I mean, it will become more apparent as I go on how I've done it. Well, there's also a draw routine as well. So if the draw, it doesn't just noughts win in that case. I actually need to get what's a nought. How can I get it to draw? Yeah, so the crosses win then. It should be a draw. There you go, draw. So it draws as well. So it's got a routine for when you draw too, which is good, because obviously if you didn't have that, then you could just go on. There is a little bit of a bug with it at the minute. So currently you can just, that as a bug. I will fix that, but I was trying to remove the event click, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be working at the minute. But I thought I'd just like present how do you get the actual, how do you check for the win conditions, how do I actually add the shapes, and how does it basically work. So without further ado, let's start with the project. We're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. We're going to do the HTML and the CSS first because it's just easier. So if I add a new file, I'm going to add index.html. We're going to add a folder called main CSS. Or CSS, sorry. Then we're going to add another folder called JS. Oh, not there. No. Wait. I've not used Visual Studio for a while. There we go. I want to add a new folder at the top that will come on. There we go, JavaScript. And I'm going to add a new file called main.css, which will be our CSS. And then I'm going to add a new one, which is going to be our main.js, which is just a new file, JavaScript, which is just our JavaScript. So of course you want to just start on the HTML file. I'm going to assume you know what all this is. I don't really feel there's any need to go over that. If you're, this is just the head and the doc type. So obviously we're linking to the main CSS and we're linking to the main JavaScript. I don't think I should have to go over that really if you're watching this video. I want to create our body, and then we want to close. This is more just setting up the scaffolding for the page really, so yeah. So I've created the actual squares using grid CSS, and I'll just go through that now. So this is our grid. I'm going to create div class grid, and then I'm going to create basically box 1. The reasons for all this will become apparent later because we need to use these IDs, box 1, for on-click events basically. Then we just want to repeat that 9 times. So go dun dun dun, control and paste, control however many times is 9. We want to change these ID values each time. And then we'll go on to adding the CSS next. I want to just sort of go through this quite fast so we can get onto the real meat, because the JavaScript, there's quite a lot of JavaScript to go through with this. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure if my solution is the most elegant. I think it's probably around 30 or 40 lines of JavaScript. So I just want to get through this part quite fast so we can just get onto the real meat. Okay, so we've got our HTML set up there. Let's go to our CSS. So, okay. So I won't worry too much. In the example I've given, I had a body with a background of green, so I'll just add that again, just because why not? Might as well. It can be, of course, whatever colour you wish. H2. Actually, did we add the? Yeah, probably want the. We also want just a title, so we'll just get that in there. Noughts and crosses, or tic-tac-toe, or whatever you want to call it. H2, and I'll just give that some font styling. So this is fairly self-explanatory. Font family, monospace, blah 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 blah. Now let's just go on to the proper stuff. So grid, which is our sort of grid containing our, it's like our container for the, we're going to use grid positioning for this. So we're going to go grid, display, columns, which will set our columns and our grid, 150, 150, 150. I've misspelled something there. What have I done wrong? Oh, grid template. Sorry, I meant to put grid template there. Grid template columns. Then we're going to do grid auto rows, which sets up the rows. 150 pixels. Width 450 pixels. Margin auto, which will center it. And then background white, because we've got that background green up above. Okay. Next I need to create the box, which is basically the squares. That's what I call the squares. So border solid, which will just give it a black border on the sides, and background white, because I've of course the green background. So let's just save that. Let's just see what it looks like at the minute. Okay, so there's no content in there. Why is that doing that? It's probably something else I need to add as well. Okay. Wait, have I put 15 instead of 150 or something? Let's just check. 150, 150, 150. Grid auto. Grid. Oh, okay, yeah. I just misspelled. Done that incorrectly. It should be auto rows. So if I save that, reload. Now it works. So there's your board. There's your basic game board. Obviously it doesn't do anything at the minute. So we're going to need noughts and crosses. We need some symbols to represent each of those two states in the game, or those two players. So we'll just have the class called naught. Width and height, I'll just copy and paste this. These are quite self-explanatory really. And then we're going to add this. I apologise if I'm going a bit fast and you get used, but okay, so let me just explain what's going on there. Background is the red, gives a background colour of red. Border radius sets it to makes it a circle basically. Margin auto because you want it to be in the middle of the containing element that it's within. And I'll sort of describe how we add these later on once we get into the JavaScript, because you have to add them programmatically on the click. So there we go. And there's a bit of a margin on the top as well. Okay, so that's naught. Then we want to add cross. Now this is a bit more harder. I had to Google this one to be honest. So I'm just going to copy and paste this quickly. Okay, so we've got a width, display inline block, border, and then basically linear gradient, all this 45 degrees, 135. This basically creates a cross shape. So, yeah. I'm not a great CSS whiz, but I just sort of Googled that to find that out. Anyway, let's get into the real meat of this thing, which is the JavaScript. So let's see how that looks anyway now. I'll just make sure everything's saved. Save, yeah. They look the same because we haven't added anything. But basically, once we add the onClick events, the initial onClick events, it should add the shapes, which is the first part of it, I guess. So we're going to do this window on load equals function. And close brackets, and we basically want to add references to all these. So box one. So before we were adding like box one as ID, box two, just so we know which box has been clicked on. So we go document, get element by ID, that one. Now we go making sure it's exactly the right. There we go. So now we've got a reference in our code to those individual blocks. We need to create 9 of them because there are 9. So I'll just do that. I need to rename. Each one needs to have their own unique. I'll just zoom this in a bit actually, in case you can't see it too well. Zoom in a bit more. There we go, that should be viewable now, hopefully. A bit more easy to see. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we need to make sure each one's got the relevant name. Okay, then 6, then 7, then 8. And 9. Okay, so we've got references to our boxes. Nothing really happens to them at the minute, but we've got them, so that's good. So what next? So next we need to add event listeners. So event listeners are just a way of adding on-click events in this case. So it's basically waiting for when an event functions do this thing, basically. So let's go box 1. Which is this variable we've defined here. You just said it's gone bright red now. You go add event listener. There you go. It's sort of auto completes, which is nice. We want to add click because that's the event that we're listening for. And then we do this function, and we want to do this click box, and we're going to basically pass it in a number so that so it understands when we create the click box function in a second, it'll know which box has been clicked. Okay, and this false. Now we want to do that again 9 times over. Semicolon. It's probably too many now. I want to make it for each individual box. 8, 9. Okay. Now we need to change the number that's being passed in because it's a different one each time. Could probably do this in more efficient ways, but like I said, I was just sort of sketching this out earlier. So yada yada yada. Now we should have the click event. So now obviously we need to create an event called a function for that to be run, and also we need to create, like I was talking about before. The way I'm doing it is creating an array with numbers, and then every time replacing the numbers when they go into position, and then adding an X or an O, which will make more sense in a bit, I think. And then for the switching, doing a variable. Okay, so next we're going to, like I was saying, we're going to add this clickbox function, and we're also going to add 2 variables, one of which is checking the well, I'll show you how I've done it anyway. So basically that's our unload. Within that we just want that there, and then we go, I'm going to create this function, this variable called naughts. We're going to set it to true, and then I'm going to define our grid, which is an array, grid array. One, we're going to initialize it 8, 9. Okay, now let's next create our clickbox function and then the associated functions that go with it, I guess. So function, this is the function that'll get called when you click on one of these, and it accepts the number parameter. Click box, that's the one. Num. So okay, then we're going to create. So basically, when that happens, we want it to do 2 things. We want it to add the shape that we created in the CSS before. So we want it to add these naught or cross based on which turn it is, and we also want to check the overall game state. So we're going to have to create 2 separate functions for that. So let's just first go to this. These functions don't exist yet, but just so we've got a, we'll pass in the number, which has been passed from the onClick. Okay. Then we want to check the game state, which because we want it to check the game state. I'm going to pass it the number 2. Okay. So let's create our I think first we'll create the add shape function. Just get a function, add shape. It passes the number in that we've passed up here, and there's going to be quite a lot of code here, and this is the way I've done it. Today. So I think first we'll do console.log number. This should work, I think, if I just check it in the. Okay, so save that. I think it will work if I check it now. Let's just log the console when it's clicked. Let's just check it works. Yeah, so it just returns 1. This game state's erroring out because I've not created it yet, but if you go free, so you can see that it returns back the specific ID that we're clicking on. So we'll do that 6660 whatever, 5, 4, yada yada yada. Okay, cool. So that's, now we need to actually add the shape. So to do this, we do this. Box equals document get element by ID. We want to get it by ID because you just want to get the generic box, and then we want to say plus the number that's been passed in. Okay, and then basically what we do is we create a switch statement. So remember we've set naught to true because the initial shape that we play with is naught. So we want to determine is that true or false, basically. So we go case. We create two cases for it, one of which is true, and then what? Just create a break here as well, and then one of which is false. Bada bing, bada bosh. And then we create a default, which will probably never ever fire, but it'll be there anyway. Just in case something goes wrong, I suppose. So the default will just be something's gone wrong, which will probably never ever fire, but okay. So we need to add the case for if it's true. So if we want to add a naught, we do this const new naught. So this is so we create a new instance of the naught, create element. We want to create a div, and then we do this box, which is a reference to the ID and the number. Append child, which basically adds this new naught element to the box we have selected from above with the specific number. New naught, and we also want to add box class list dot add naught. Okay, so let's just see if that works first. So what should happen now is when I click on a box, it should return with a shape. Okay, I don't know why that's happening. I'll just quickly comment this out, I think, for a second. Why is that not working? What have I done wrong? Must have misspelled something or something. Give me a sec. Class list, box class list, add naught, new naught. What have I done here? Case, true, yeah, break. Document, yeah. Append box lists. Then we just repeat for the cross, so I'll just copy that. So, save that. Not sure why that's not working, doesn't error or anything, it doesn't work. Why? Why is it not working? Must have missed something somewhere. Strange. Switch naught, yeah, case true. New naught, document create element, yeah, div. Append child, yeah. Box class list naught. Oh, I've misspelled naught. Very silly error there, but there we go. There we go, so now, yeah, it seems to, oh yeah, because I'm, so basically at the minute, we can add our naughts, but as you can see, it never switches to the next round, to the next go, it never switches to the next, to the crosses. So of course we need to fix that. So that's where we do the next function, which is the game state, which is where we'll switch our naughts and also we'll sort of update that array we created before. So this array here will get updated. So if, for example, if I clicked on the first one, what's going to happen is it's going to go doof. It's going to pass in this. So instead of that 1, there'll be a O there. So let's create our function GameState. Let's create it below here. And I'll uncomment this because you want, this is quite essential. It's basically where most of the game logic occurs, apart from the winning check. Check game state number open brackets, close brackets. Don't need that. Function game state, so we get const grid array index equals grid array index of, and then we want to find out what in this for grid array, which is this, what index is num at, basically. And then we want to do, we'll have a conditional here which checks for if it's naught or a cross, and then sets it to either false or true for naught, in a nutshell. So let's go if naught is equals true, do this, not that, why did it do this, else, because it's only ever going to be true or false, check, do the actions we want it to do when it's cross, basically. So we do this gridArr splice, which is the JavaScript array method, gridArr index, we want to delete one of them, so we go 1, and we add in O. I mean, it's capital or markers. So I'm adding it, replacing it with a string wherever that grid was before, wherever that index, whatever that number was before, it replaces it with an O or an X. Like I said, I've done this sort of off the top of my head about checking any other implementations. I just wanted to do this, so it's not necessarily the best way to do it, but it is a way to do it, and it works. So then I just do a console log just to check gridArr and num. This is just for me, so I can do a console.log and check everything works fine. gridArr index, which is our index, and then we want to check it, set it so it's the next state. So we check, we set assign naught to false, and then basically for the other way around we just want to reverse that around. So we go gridArr splice, we want to make it an X next time because it's a cross, and then we do, that's the same, and then we want this to be set to true because you want it to switch around. So let's just save that and see what happens. So I'll refresh this, and it doesn't work. I think this needs to be above, doesn't it? I think. What? Why are you saying that? Ah, I called it CheckGameState instead. It should be CheckGameState. I put game as well, that's not working. There we go, so now we have it switching. There's no way we can win, there's no way you can tell it wins, but now we have the noughts and the crosses showing and switching as you'd expect. So let's have a look at what's happening here. So we've got, as you can see, wherever there's the array gridArr gets updated with an X or an O based on what's been placed there. So you can see XOO, and then you can see here XOO. So far, so good. So obviously that's cool, but we also want to check for a win condition. So we're going to create a new function for that, basically. So after these two things have run, we just do a check win, this check win, and we'll create that now. So the check_win function. Check_win function is probably the most involved function of them all, because we're checking for the win conditions, we're also checking for the draw conditions, and we're doing a lot of stuff in it basically. So this will be the longest function that we do. So check win, and we're going to also create a. Well, first let's do the first bit of this. So we want to get a returned. We want to get a variable which returns how many of the elements within gridArray contain O's or X's basically. So to do this, we create a map. Which Okay, so what that bit of code is doing is basically mapping the grid array, checking for this, and then filtering it down to a string. And let's do the same for the crosses as well. Let cross indices, and obviously we want to change this to X. So it checks now for the X there. Then we can show this with console.log. So we go noughtIndices and cross indices, and I'll just put something like O and X. Okay. Quickly just. So there you go. So now you can see there it comes up. It shows the exact position. So if you can, there's 1 and 7 now. And basically, that gives us something we can check now. So we can check. We can perform checks on that. So we need to create. What we obviously need to do now is check. There's certain win conditions. So for example, if I was to play the game and I did that's a horizontal win position, 0, 1, 2. So 0, 1 and 2 index positions would be a win position. So how I've done it is basically I've created some which we'll be doing in a second, is creating variables of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 different win positions for each, so it's 14 overall. And I basically run a function called contains, which I'll write in a second, which checks to see if those index positions match. So this is a little difficult. This is actually the part that took me the longest thing to work out of everything. So let's do function. We create a new function called contains. This will be for checking our A, B, and C values, which is our win conditions. So this would only work because it's so hard coded this way in a 3x3 grid, but that's what it is. And like I said, this is sort of index of A more than -1, and then we do that the same for A, B, and C. So like that. Now this bit of code will check that the index of the values that are passed in matches these values, matches the. It'll make sense anyway in a second. So now let's create the win conditions. So let's just win conditions, and then we'll basically create some variables for that. This is so we go const win horizontal equals, and then Jagger, shush. and the first horizontal win conditions are 0, 1 and 2. In fact, it'll be 8, sorry, because you can do this. You just do dirt, dirt, dirt as well, which is 6, 7, 8. Yeah, sorry, it's 8. So that's contains, that's referencing that, and then it's naught indices. Right. So that's our first win condition. What I missed there. I missed something. Constant contains. Call it check. Win horizontal contains A, B, C, no indices. What's wrong with that? Okay, let me just check something. Okay, that was, seems like it was the same thing. And then we want win condition 2, which will be the bottom row, 6, 7, 8. So we're just, all we're going to do is like check basically for the win conditions. So what's happening is these indices, which have been mapped from here with the checking for the position of O, we check these, do any of these match, and there's a ton of them you have to add, so I'll just copy and paste them. But as long as you understand what's going on there, it's sort of okay, really, to be honest. 6, 7, 8, 0, 1, 2, that's the horizontals, this is the diagonals, 2 diagonals. I'll change that to 2 actually, because it's a big, no, I'll just leave it actually. My naming is a bit off there, I've done vertical 1 and 3. Oh no, maybe, yeah, there is 3, okay. Anyway. Let's just check. Some of them might be missing. Like I said, I've been writing this quite sort of prototyping it before. So this is the win conditions for crosses and the win conditions for noughts. Okay. Next, we actually want to check and display something to the user if wins. So the way I've done this is quite verbose. There's probably a better way of doing this, but basically I'm just going to check if any of the conditions are met. So we do this. If, okay, and, so this is our checking for if noughts win, and also I need to add the new one that I've added, which is this check win horizontal. So I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing here. It is a bit verbose. There is probably a way better method of doing this, but it is what it is. So this is saying if check win horizontal or check win horizontal equals true. So if any of these equals true, which is a win condition, then we just do an alert, and we also want to we do an alert, so it pops up on screen and it'll say noughts win. And then we also want to set up our last function, well, not our last function, but one of our last functions, which is obviously reset the board, which we'll add after we've done all this. Okay, so those are the win conditions for that. So win conditions, condition checking for noughts, and then basically copy that and then put for crosses. Then we just need to change obviously we need to set it to these cross ones. Also I need to add this because that's what I missed before. 6, 7, 8 and 8, And then we just need to change these names, which I'll do now. I'm just going to copy and paste it. I mean, you sort of get the idea, isn't it? Watching me write it out is not going to make much difference. And we just need our horizontal too as well. Then with the or crosses when. That's from there. It is there. What are you talking about? What? Yeah, well, I've missed something somewhere. Oh, yes. Alright, so that should check for the horizontals. And then, of course, we also need it. There's going to be a situation where you can draw. This took me, I only just worked this out a few minutes ago, like an hour or so ago. But basically, the way I've done it is that the draw condition is determined this way. So we go grid array. Every function. It's a bit verbose, this method, but it does work. Just get my head around it. Element. Return. Type of element equals string ding. So what is that doing really? So that is doing, and then we have to add a bunch of checks as well. But basically that's saying if everything's been filled, the entire build's been filled, so everything's a string now instead of a number. And then we need to obviously check that all the other values, win conditions, are not met. So this is my extremely verbose way that I did this, but I'm just going to do add, and. So we go doof, and then I need to add the 2 more new ones. And then we want to, I've missed something somewhere because, oh, this also needs a open bracket, close bracket. That doesn't need to be there. Yeah, that's the end of the, okay. Just get my head around what I'm doing. Okay. Now this last function is particularly ugly, actually, to be honest. This last conditional check is about quite ugly, so I'll just copy and paste it from the completed version. That's the function. Why? Just missed something somewhere. I missed. Just copy and paste this. Okay, that works now. Also need to add this new one, horizontal 2, which I did before. And I'll explain what's going on here in a second. I'm not going to just leave you hanging, I guess. Okay, so what's going on here? So it's checking for a false value, which is what that exclamation mark means, shorthand for that. And is an operator just to say and this isn't, and this is false, and this is false, and this is false. Because every win condition obviously has to be false for it to be a draw. Otherwise it wouldn't be a draw. Okay. So lastly, I think it's the last thing. We need to just add a reset function. So we go function reset And the method I've done for this is really simple, really probably cheatery. I've just done location reset, which just reloads the page basically. Reload. Not perfect, and can probably be improved upon. Like you can probably do something like take out, change other classes and stuff. Let's just save that and see what happens. So hopefully, with any luck. Okay, yeah, I've just declared something the same twice. Where? Which one is it? 87. Oh yeah, it needs to be 2. So we'll run if I do that. Okay. There we go. There we go. Let's just win for the noughts. Win for the noughts. Resets. There we go. That's that. That's how it works. So let's just try and get a draw. Ah. Yeah, that's that bug I was talking about. It's a naught win because of that. Okay, the draw's not working for some reason. I missed something off there. Crosswind horizontal 2 is any new thing there. Oh yeah, I need to basically this is why this method's a bit verbose and silly, but like yeah, I need to add the false value there. Now it should work with a drawing situation. That would be a naught win. Just try and get a crosses win, yeah, of course. Crosses win again, yeah. Crosses win on a diagonal. I'm gonna cross now, aren't I? So if I do this. Wait, what? Oh yeah, it's diagonal. Just get confused then, like by. Oh yeah, there's still that bug. I need to fix that with the double clicking. That's gonna be a naught win. But yeah, anyway, that should work in the most basic sense. I hope that made sense. There's quite a lot to cover, and obviously, like I said, this is partly a tutorial, partly to just explore one method you could use to solve this noughts and crosses game problem, I suppose. It's not necessarily the only way to do it. Like I said, there's another method called using magic square, which is probably simpler. But I didn't go for that method just because I basically just wanted to try and do it all myself, see what I could come up with by doing that, essentially. It's a noughts win. There you go, there's a draw situation, so that shows you the draw works. Because there's no winner there. Okay, I hope that's been useful. I've been Noah Nerd. Like and subscribe if you like the content. Not sure what I'll be doing next. If you have any suggestions for anything you'd like to see, please let me know. On this channel, I'd like to develop it more, of course. And even if you've got a challenge for me to do something like this, like develop a game like Noughts and Crosses or Hangman or whatever, I'll have a crack at it at some point. Hope that's been interesting. The source code for this is up on GitHub, so I'll share that as well, so you can have a look at it. Yeah. Bye.